I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Education for the School District of Baraboo to order for Monday, November the 9th, 2015, with roll call. Mr. Cummings.
Here.
Mr. McNevin is not here. He will be joining us shortly. Mr. Meering.
Here.
Mr. Mortimer.
Here.
Ms. Riley.
Here.
Mr. Vedro.
Here.
And Bodak here. Continuing to pledge the flags to the right of the board. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. I need to see who I am.
I would entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of the last board meeting of October the 26th.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. We do have an agenda adjustment.
We'd like to, under personnel, we'd like to add approval of long-term sub.
I move to approve that change.
Second.
And we are going to slot that
Take whomever.
at B. Brings us then to correspondence. I have none. Mr. Meering?
Yeah, I just had a correspondence by Representative Considine. It's regarding some bills that are before the legislature regarding referendum, and probably we'll discuss this at our next meeting more fully. I'll probably be bringing a proposal resolution on that, so I have no need to talk about it anymore now. So.
Okay, thank you. Administrative correspondence.
I have a few correspondence. I have one that I'll pass around. We have email correspondence from a parent celebrating the great work of our cross-country team, so I'll just share that so you can read for yourselves. And if you haven't been on social media at all today, you would be surprised to hear that Baraboo High School is a contender to win $100,000. We're one of 100 finalists, and the top 22 schools will each win $100,000 for the State Farm Safe Driving Grant. So we have all week long to vote. And I don't know, Glenn, if you'd just like to highlight what that $100,000 could do for the building if we were to win?
22% of it, $22,000 would go towards safe driving, educational opportunities for our students. So that would be very easily spent in conjunction with our local law enforcement and all the possibilities that are out there, including a driving simulator that we think we could put every one of our students at the high school through by the end of the school year, using some time in our enrichment period and using our local police department to help facilitate that. The other 78%, we really are able to identify different needs that we have in this building, and one of those areas that we have wanted to really work hard on is remodeling in our library. And Lawrence, our library media specialist, has had a lot of really great ideas to particularly focus on the other side of this library and look at how we can change the flooring and furniture, make it flexible, modern, comfortable, and really inviting for students. So I think there's just all kinds of possibilities. We also are looking at how we could set some money aside for mental health first aid training for all of our staff, because as we've talked about many times here at the board level, that's an area that we've been working on, identifying ways to use our talented staff to provide more professional development for our teachers in that area. So those are just a few of the highlights of the ways we want to spend the money.
So get out and vote and encourage everybody else to vote. The
Every
last,
day.
yes,
Every day.
every day this whole week. And then lastly, for correspondence, Nikki Green and I attended the Wisconsin School Public Relations Association conference last week, and the school district was awarded 3 awards. So I have them here. We got a merit award for our Thunderbird Thursday e-newsletter. And that wasn't enough. We got also an award for the Home of the Thunderbirds and You, which is our hiring and marketing materials. And then we got a very special award of excellence for our 2015 through 2018 strategic plan instructional materials. Or I guess our materials are not instructional necessarily, but marketing and communication materials. So Baraboo School District was one of 25 school districts that received awards at the conference, and also as a reminder, the mayor came along with members of Teal and MSA to present with the school district that day too.
Is that it for administrative? Brings us to the agenda entitled Public Viewpoints. Do we have anyone here for public viewpoints tonight? Any public viewpoints? Any public viewpoints? Hearing none, I'd like to then move on to staff, student, and community recognition. And we are honored tonight to have with us the Baraboo Police Chief, Mark Schaaf, Baraboo Fire Chief, Kevin Steve, and the Director of Emergency Management for Sauk County, Jeff Jelinek. And I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Miller for a little recognition for these three individuals.
Stand up here with me, guys. This is a really dynamic trio here.
That's a good way to put it.
We've had a really long-standing partnership with our local safety agencies, but most recently, we've really been involved, and we have had the opportunity to have all of our administrators trained on incident command system, which helps us deal with any emergency. And then, as you were aware, last week, we trained over 500 of our staff, and also included the parochial schools in Cobeson, on reunification in the case or the event that we were to have something really serious happen. So we just really wanted to formally recognize the work that you all do. This is Kevin Steve, the famous Kevin Steve for the fire department. And everybody knows Chief Mark Schaaf too. And this is Jeff Jelinek, who's the emergency management director for Sauk County. So I have a certificate for each of you I want to see in your offices. And I was just wondering if you all had some words for the board.
Yes, certainly do. Well, last week when Lori emailed and asked us to come to the meeting, you know, I emailed back and said, you know, on my behalf, I'm just doing the job that I'm supposed to be doing, is working with the community, and the school district is obviously a vital partner in that. And she emailed back and she said, yeah, but we do have a partnership. But just to recap what she said, in August, Chief Schaaf and I and Jeff Jelinek went into her office. In a matter of less than an hour, we had this set up. So we said, hey, this is what we're looking at doing. We'd like the school district's participation. She jumped right on board. So if anybody deserves recognition, it's Lori for her leadership in the school district, along with her leadership team. You know, Danny Scott is a big part of that, and certainly Ellen Weiland is probably the biggest part, because I think she probably keeps them all organized. But seriously though, in less than an hour time, we had a date set for teaching or instructing on incident command system to all of the school principals and associate principals. You know, they took 3 hours out of their schedule for that. And then last Wednesday was a pretty big feat. The Baraboo School District is a leader in Sauk County. No other school district has done this thus far. So you should be very proud of your leadership team, and you should be very proud of yourselves for promoting that, because we all have a stake in this game of protecting our children. Whether you have kids here or not, they're your children, because you have the duty to watch over them. So congratulations to you guys. Thank you very much, and I appreciate this.
You want me to talk?
You do that.
I guess the only thing I'd like to add is I do appreciate the positive working relationship we have with the entire level. Every building principal is more than open to come in no matter what. And we know that in an emergency, we're not going to be able to do this by ourselves. We need help. And to have the help and to be able to walk in, and I try not to do it during the day when students are here, but be able to walk up and say, hey Glenn, how are you? And he can say, hey Mark, how you doing? That's a huge step. And a lot of communities don't enjoy that relationship, and I appreciate the opportunity to work with everyone here.
Say the best for us.
Oh, yeah. I just say thank you. I mean, we've got a great working relationship, and I think, you know, as Mark and Kevin have said, it's gonna be when something happens, we knowing people now, it makes it a lot simpler than trying to figure out who's who, and it's been fun, and just doing the training and the stuff that we've worked on, it's been a great learning experience for me too, because I just don't have Baraboo. I've got all the rest of the school districts in the county, so it helps me take it out and spread it across the county, what they're doing here in Baraboo. So thank you very much for the recognition.
And there will be a story right on the news tonight, Channel 3,
Yeah.
we think.
Channel 3 was here tonight and did an interview. The star was Danny.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know, she wanted her own dressing room, that's all.
Sounds like the $78,000 is spent.
And yeah, and it's talking about the collaborations and how we're preparing it. A lot of different analogies you can use, but the worst thing that can have happen in a crisis is go, what now? And we have to have plans in place, and we have to be ready, and that's what our goal is.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Brings us then to continuous school improvement, and we have with us Ms. Scott, Ms. Rockwell, and Ms. Lohr to talk about the restorative practices in the district. I'll turn it over to Ms. Scott.
While these guys are getting set up, I just want to take a minute and really thank Kristen and Jen. They have spearheaded bringing restorative practices to our district. We had the opportunity to have the middle school principal from McFarland School District the last Friday in October spend the entire day with us. In the morning, he did a training with our administrative staff on restorative practices, and then in the afternoon, worked with a restorative practices work group from the high school along with high school administration and really helping to bring this to our district. So these two are definitely the passion behind that, and just thrilled that they are as committed to this as I am. So go ahead.
In case you don't know me, I'm Kristen Rockwell now. I teach academic seminar here at the high school.
And I'm Jennifer Lohr. I teach math at the middle school.
Alright, so first, just some background on where we're currently at this year on our data, because I know we don't do anything unless looking at data. So here's where we are at for our major and minor offenses in the classroom for our entire district. In September, there were 18, on average, 18 students written up per day. Whether they were sent to the office or not is a different story. Some of them were handled in the classroom. In October, there was on average, 26 students written up per day in the district. That's not good. So, looking at our risk ratio, our females compared to males are 2.5 times more likely to get written up than a female. That's just where we're currently at, baseline, and what we're gonna do about it. So John Dewey said we don't learn from our experience, but we learn from reflecting on our experience. A lot of restorative practices incorporates reflection into the behavior. A lot of times when we suspend a student, they're not reflecting. They're either staring at a wall, or maybe they're at home playing video games. They're not reflecting on what they've done and what they can do to improve. So how can this restorative practices help our write-ups? What can it do for our students? We match a consequence with the behavior. So restorative practices doesn't say there's no consequence. It just says we need to match the consequence to the behavior so that the student sees that correlation. It focuses on finding solutions and helps teach them to make positive choices. Because of that reflection, they then say, what can you do to make this better next time, and reflect on it. This is research-based. They've practiced this in schools from elementary through the high school, and they found success with this research. That's why this is a new, well, not new, but it's being more implemented in schools. So I was thankful that I won the ERCOL award last spring, and with that I got money. And this is how we paid for the training. So on Friday, October 31st in the morning, our administrators were welcome to sit in on a session for this. And in the morning, our central office administrators were invited, building administrators, PBIS external coaches, and our school psychologists. And it was a focus just for these people with this trainer on what their role can be and how they can help it.
The trainer was who, again?
His name is Aaron Tarnitzer. He is a middle school principal in McFarland
Okay.
who does restorative practices.
Okay.
And kind of how he rolled it out in his school and helping the district with it.
Hmm.
And then in the afternoon session, it was high school specific focus, because I'm at the high school, so I wanted high school there. And they focused specifically on the high school and what they can do here with what the population we have. In attendance, we did have all of our high school administrators there. We had high school staff members, our PBS external coaches, and school psychologists.
Okay, so we have a quote up here, we must fit the program to the kids rather than fit the kids to the program. And so like she mentioned before, this is research-based, and so it's something that we think would be positive for our school district. For accountability, it says, what do we hope students do when they make a mistake? So we want them to own the problem, we want them to take responsibility, we want them to fix it. And I think a common problem, if you just give it to detention, they're not really fixing the problem, they're serving their time, but they don't learn from it, and then they're back in the detention the next week and so on. And so we really want them to fix it and to reflect on what they did, take ownership of their actions, and kind of come up with a plan with an administrator or with a teacher on how they can change their behavior. Being accountable requires that the offender repairs the harm that was caused. So I think many times, if we suspend a kid due to something that happened in a classroom, maybe that harm that was caused never gets resolved with the teacher. And so if there's other ways, and sometimes suspension or detention still will be necessary, in certain circumstances, but this will help the harm to be resolved with who caused the harm and then who was affected by it, which is really important. This you'll see a lot when we do restorative practices training, but what we want to be is we want to be with the student. We want to have high control and high support for the student, and so restorative practices is up here. When we have high control but we're not really supporting the student, that's when we're doing something to them, so it's more punitive, like you have a detention. You're not talking about it, this is what happens. When you're high support but maybe not giving high control, maybe you're doing something for the student, like telling them what to do, this is how you're gonna fix it, I'm telling you, you have to do it this way. And then low support and low control is maybe you just don't do anything about the situation or try to fix the behavior. And so we wanna be up here, we wanna be doing it with the student to support them, but we also want them to be accountable. There will never be enough consequences to motivate tough kids to learn and to behave if we are not first developing positive relationships. And without positive teacher-student relationships, no discipline plan will work. So we've all worked with those tough kids, and if you don't have a positive relationship, they're not gonna work with you. And so restorative practices encourages that positive relationship because you're coming up with a plan together on how to fix the situation. Up here to show some examples of some things the trainer talked to us about and some things we want to put in place. So the focus is always on recovery and how do we restore what happened. It's not on punishment and alienating the kid. So one thing they talked about was doing formal conferences, and so that's something we would have to train our administrators and counselors on. Groups and circles is something that our teachers could start putting into place for our students. Small impromptu conferences, and then there's effective questions and effective statements that can be used, and she'll show you a poster later that have those on there. So some questions we just want you to think about are, why do we push kids away when they need us the most? So if you look at the kids that are getting suspended or putting them in detention or ISS, typically the kids that really need us, maybe they don't have a positive role model in their life. So why, if they need us so bad, are we, keeping them out of school? And sometimes there's going to be a reason for that still, right? If a student brings a weapon to school, they probably still may sometimes be suspended, but sometimes there's certain circumstances where we can keep them in school, and that would be a more positive experience for them because they really need us. What do we do when the damage is already done, and is there a better way? And so we think restorative practices could be a better way for our district.
So some next steps. We've had this training, now what? And will it work with our student population? And I know we've actually rolled it out a little bit here, and I don't know, are you gonna share your story, Glenn?
Sure.
Okay. We did try it here with some students, and we'll tell you the success of that. But our high school plan is, I do have some more money available, so I'm going to be purchasing some resources about circling and in the, how teachers in their classroom can circle to build positive relationships, not just among them and the students, but among students and students. Because in classroom, students have to interact with other students, and if they're not good relationships among everybody, that class is not going to learn as much as a class where everybody gets along. Also, just restorative practices and the how-tos for people implementing this at more of a administrative level and how to do that. Same with the middle school. Elementary, our psychologists were in the training. They came in the morning. And for the resources, there are some posters. So this is just some of the questions that students are asked. What happened? What were you thinking at the time? What have you thought about since? Who has been affected by what you have done and in what way? And what do you think you need to do to make things right? So it puts all ownership on the student, you just guide the questions. And then it talks to the people who've been harmed. So if it was the teacher or if it was a student, those people get asked, the victims, they say, what did you think when you realized what happened? What impact has this incident had on you and others? And what has been the hardest thing for you? And what do you think needs to happen to make things right? So that way, the victim gets a say, like, I think this is what needs to happen to make it right. And then once you repair that relationship, they can both move on. I'll let Glenn speak about the high school and kind of what happened.
Well, we've had a lot of conversations about this. We, you know, the really important part of this that I think resonates is how it's really about a high level of accountability for learning and differentiating the learning when it comes to the whole concept of consequences. You know, how am I gonna learn best? How am I gonna be able to grow from this? And how am I gonna be able to maybe turn some aspect of my life around? And, you know, traditional forms of discipline, as we use on a very frequent basis here, research has shown is much less effective, especially when it comes to repeat offenders. And that's where this really demonstrates a difference. Is, you know, students, because they're learning ultimately from restorative practices, you might be changing some of your behavior for the future. There's a connection to you know, what you want better for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, I you know, just recently an example of a student that was found in possession of chewing tobacco at school, and we don't really have a choice in that area but to give that student, to refer that student to the police, and that comes with a $150 citation, and that's ouch right there, but there also needs to be a school consequence, and so the school consequence is typically a half-day suspension in school. The choice for that we gave the student was to take the half-day suspension or to write a report on the effects of chewing tobacco. And the student really jumped at that option to write a report on chewing tobacco and was given just some basic parameters. You know, it didn't need to be a you know, MLA research paper, but the student ended up reading an article, watched a couple YouTube videos, or several, I'm told, and also wrote a one-page, double-spaced, very nicely done report on this. And it was really well done. And anyway, that's just an example of how you connect some learning to these consequences, as opposed to just, you know, what is simple is to write a citation, what is simple is to put them into an in-school suspension, but we know that those are not really effectual in the long run, if you look at research, and we need to be about how we help people grow. So it's just one example, and again, just a lot of common sense, you know, that's connected to this and tied into how we really need to ultimately help students and really then develop relationships with them moving forward. So the student who's on the bus, you know, the student who's having a difficult time and might have used some inappropriate language, you know, may need to interview the bus driver and find out what effect that has on that climate on the bus. There's just different ways for that student to really ultimately learn from some of these behaviors that may not be turning around because you're giving them a bus suspension for a day. Some things that will hopefully make a difference in them changing the behavior because they're learning some other pathways.
I was at a conference on Friday for Talent and Gifted for the state, and it was, the particular subject I was at was on AP coursework and trying to get more students to take it. One of the things that this particular school district does is they, again, this is talking about academics and then saying that, yeah, they're fully on board with using restorative practices and to get more students engaged, even the ones that are tough, engage with more rigorous coursework through such practices as this. So I applaud your work and keep it up and keep it growing. We need more of it.
I would add to that, all the research on criminality happened to, on the county board, also be involved with the restorative justice and alternatives to incarceration, you know, and all the research across the board and starting in schools suggests that these kinds of practices can change the culture for young people to understand different options that are available to them, and that the world of crime and punishment, if you will, needs this alternative as well. So thank you for all the work that you do, are doing, and will do.
Any other
Thank you.
questions?
Thanks for using your grant this way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I figured-
Congratulations on getting it,
Oh,
of
thank
course, on the award.
Yeah.
But then for bringing it into the schools this way, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, thank you.
Thank you.
Up next on the agenda, under reports, we had a brief discussion about CG Schmidt and Phase 2 services for the district. And the request from the board was to have CG Schmidt come and meet with us and walk us through what it is that they can offer us for Phase 2 services. So I will turn it over to Eric Schmidt and Sarah. And Bob is with us tonight as well from EUA, so I'll let you guys take the floor.
Well, thank you for having us. It's good to be back. Obviously, I'm Eric Schmidt with CG Schmidt, and I'll be leading the presentation, this particular team. Sarah's gonna be clicking for me, if I can look at you and point. As we discussed before, when you look at the snapshot of our team members, we'll go through the team introduction, the process that we're gonna go through. Some of this might be a little bit repetitive of what we went through for Phase 1. The scope of services, what this entails, some of the work that we're gonna be providing for the district. And finally, we're gonna finish with a timeline so you can get an anticipation of the progression of work over the next several months. So again, I'm Eric Schmidt with CG Schmidt. Sarah Dunn, our communications specialist with CG Schmidt, and Bob Weigert's gonna be presenting on behalf of Sanguine Architects. And a lot of these people should look pretty familiar from Phase 1. These are the people that we'll be bringing in as your specialties are needed throughout this entire process. And I think one of the things to stress is that during Phase 1, we talked about a whole group of people that you probably will never see back in our offices that are supporting us in those endeavors, whether it's from the estimating standpoint, the marketing materials, the interviews with different staff members, et cetera. So we're simply the face of a much, much larger team. Let's talk a little bit about the process with Phase 2. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Bob.
So we've done the planning part, and, you know, if you think about what we have already in hand, that's really kind of the starting point. It's taking those pieces that we already have and then reprioritizing those to see what it is we wanna move forward, if there's things that are gonna filter out. And if you remember when we went through that process, we had the list initially, and we kind of filtered things out that moved forward in Phase 1. It would be kind of the same thing. We wanna take that list and start to filter that out to see what's gonna move forward in Phase 2. Once we have that, again, if you think about what that might be, there might be several different options of what we're looking at. And then we'd wanna go through those options and evaluate them and figure out which one we would actually move forward to a potential referendum project. So that process is essentially, you know, what we had gone through before, and then we've got the project basically at the end after referendum passes. Looking at Phase 2, as far as what we've got, well, do you wanna hit this?
Yeah, we can talk about the starting point. We submitted a letter of understanding that's simply meant to identify the parameters in which we're allowed to operate. Verify the facility study. I think this is gonna be important because even when we went through Phase 1, we had a whole list of deferred maintenance items that we took care of. But I think there was also a little bit of discovery as we went through Phase 1. We identified some additional items that may need to be added back. There's some additional staff comments that we may want to consider. So although we took a big chunk of that list off, there were a couple items that filtered back on that would require additional investigation. And that's where it comes to confirming that list. Is it still valid?
Are the estimates that we did back in 2012, which was, 3-4 years ago, are those still valid? Has things changed in the marketplace that may have an impact on some of those costs? And then the modernized community campus, that has been starting up, to start to attend those meetings and see how is that gonna filter into the phase 2 options. So even though when we completed this master plan, 3 years ago, things have already changed a little bit within the district that we need to take into account and consideration as we move forward with phase 2.
Eric?
Yes?
Just,
Sir, yes.
just wanted to make a comment. In phase 1, I brought to your attention this idea about looking ahead of the curve in terms of solar. And I want to reiterate that, especially when we look at facilities, verifying facilities studies. I want you all to be aware that as a county supervisor, Sauk County is about to approve third-party solar options, which work very well, and I would like you to put that on the list for research.
Sure.
My understanding is that Congress may approve the extension of third-party funding for solar as a part of a much larger initiative, and I think we ought to take advantage of that as the Baraboo School District, as Sauk County is doing.
Well, and I think that's a great point of why we just simply can't take what we had developed before and say it was valid then, it's valid now, let's forge on. So that's why we have to take a little bit of a step back, as Bob was alluding to, and reevaluate all those processes, because so much has changed, and we need to take advantage of those opportunities. You're absolutely correct.
And there's a great new company in Madison that started up, I think it's called Sunpower.
Yep.
And they came in and did a little, kind of a lunch and learn with us. And so we're trying to develop that partnership.
Well, I
with them.
also have 4 valid RFPs that were submitted to the county. That's organizations that specialize in third-party solar for financing. And that takes advantage, of course, of huge federal dollars in private-public partnerships, many of the things that we're committed to. And I can provide those to you as well as we begin this process.
Absolutely.
But it is something I would like to see, given the spaces that we have and the energy consumptions.
Thank you.
So relative to the scope of work, I'm gonna go through the architectural part of it. So it's really kind of the planning piece, what are we doing? And again, I kind of equate it to similar to what we had done before relative to the process and the things that we're going to be looking at. And I believe for the most part, this language was really pulled from our proposal, so I don't know if the board had seen that yet or not, but there's the teacher survey that I believe is already done, and I believe I already have it in my inbox. I just haven't had a chance to take a look at it as of yet. So looking at that information, again, refining any of the existing options that we have, so pulling those out, kind of saying what is it we're gonna be doing, and revising those if need be. Looking at any community engagement meetings that we have, and participating in those. And then as we move through it, again, depending on what it is that comes out of the planning, there would be potentially staff or administration that we wanna talk to, so that we are planning those spaces appropriately, depending on what they are. This isn't necessarily where we talk about where the outlets go, or what color the carpet is gonna be, or anything like that. It's more adjacencies, size of spaces, and what are the spaces that you actually need to support the programs that you might be looking at incorporating into the project. Looking at the planning, again, kind of looking at the curriculum, again, talking to the staff, what is the curriculum, what do we need to provide from a space standpoint. I was talking about the space should support the curriculum that you're trying to deliver, so we wanna make sure that is actually happening here. And then just moving through that, refining those options based on any survey, if we decide to do a survey, how that would work and what those options look like. And then from C.G. Schmidt's standpoint, again, taking those and starting to look at costing, constructability, and those types of things. As we go through that, if you think again back to all the different options we had, there was some graphic representation of those options. We would be doing the same thing, coming up with those graphic representations. And then at the end, if you recall, when the referendum flyer went out, there was the images of what was happening at each school. Again, those are the same types of things that would happen here. We, if we're looking at multiple sites, or if we're looking at one site, those would also be created for the referendum information. And then moving forward, any of the public information meetings that we have, we would be in attendance at those to answer any questions that come up. And then obviously presenting any information at the school board meetings. And if you remember, we had a few workshops as well, where we kind of looked at all those ideas. We'd be doing those as well.
Any questions on the scope of services?
The time frame for them?
We've got a slide at the
Okay.
end, so if I can hit on that.
All right.
Okay, and then the
I
next
can wait.
The next piece really then becomes the public information services, and that's where Kit Daly and I will partner and develop that kind of overall strategy and kind of roadmap on how to actually get, through kind of a referendum campaign, if that's what we decide to move forward with. We also, as Erica had mentioned earlier, we have a whole team of experts back in our Madison and our Milwaukee offices, so we have a lot of different people that can help, with those support materials. But the other nice thing too is that after going through this process for phase one, we realized how important the communication is, and now having Nikki on board, Nikki Green and Dean, that kind of resource internally, will make it even, I think, easier to get the information, disseminate the information out to the community. So I think it'll be a little easier for us as we move forward. And really kind of how we break this down is that kind of overall strategy and plan, and then we kind of develop a community engagement plan. And that's where the district and the board really becomes involved, so that's getting out to the Rotary and Kiwanis and all those, senior centers and all the things you did before in phase one. And then the next piece kind of is that we look at kind of the survey process and whether or not if we decide to go out for a survey, we use school perceptions in the past, we move forward with doing another survey process. We really play kind of an important part in that as far as drafting the survey, crafting those messages, getting that information out to the community, and then reporting what the results are for the survey. And then the final kind of piece is that whole communication plan. So that's where we really look at all the different communication vehicles in the community, building the relationship with the local paper, just all those different ways to get that information out in the community. So we'll develop a plan and work real closely with the district to make sure that information gets out. And then we also just, will support any kind of, community forums, and then also the Modernized Community Campus Strategic Focus Group. That's kind of a mouthful. So then we'll support that group, and, if there any materials that you need or any, additional information, we're happy to attend those meetings and get that kind of organized. So any questions on the public information services?
So what does that look like from a timeline standpoint? So, right now, you've already, did you have one or two meetings with your group?
We've only had one.
That is looking to go out through the end of January. And once that happens, there's a community engagement piece that starts to disseminate some of that information. So as you're developing kind of what comes out of that, you want to communicate, this is what we're doing, so that people start to realize that something is happening. Based on that input, that's when we'd start to look at some preliminary ideas. What is that? Kind of, again, look at what we had looked at potentially before, or add on to it if there's things that are changing. And then if there is a survey, what we try and do is get that out before, well, wherever spring break ends up in here. We like to get that survey out before then, so that that survey can be done either right before or right after break. We want to get it done before summer, kind of before the beginning of May or so, so that we can get parents and the community members thinking about this before summer. So that's kind of the key piece here, is getting that survey implemented or started and then out and back before you get to the end of the school year. Once we get to that point, then we're looking at what are those results. So what is it that we tested? What are the results? Is there some information that we should tweak based on that, or are we good? And again, if you think back, when we did the survey the first time, there was some tweaking that we did after we got that back. So we would recommend kind of doing the same thing. If you remember, I think I had talked about this probably early on last time too. I know we're showing the community engagement piece kind of, as a piece, but that really has already started. And it's really a thread that I'd say kind of goes through the entire process. These are, I would say, more of a concentrated effort depending on what it is we're doing. So in this case, the survey would come out, there would be some effort to promote that, the survey would come back with the information, there'd be information that would be sent out, again, to promote what came back. And then based on that survey information, so now we're in June, beginning of July, we're starting to look at, okay, what is the final thing that we're looking at? What are those final costs? What's the final option comprised of? And do we have to revise anything? The key thing here is the August 30th date for your resolution. If you remember, the resolution time period for a referendum has changed, it's a bit longer.
So what's 75 days now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Than it was before, so, so that's for a November 16th. Obviously, if that date pushes or moves up, or whatever the case might be, that would change as well, just to put it in perspective.
You said November 16th?
November of 16th.
Oh, okay, because it's early November.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
November 8th.
Okay,
would be
thank you.
the- yeah. And then the resolution would be August 30th.
Okay.
So, really by kind of the beginning of summer, we want to have a pretty good idea of what we're doing, and then we're refining that option, refining the dollar amount, making sure we've got everything in there, kind of ready to go.
In addition to the services that you provided the last time, we also had a contract with a gentleman who did the poll, right, perceptions, right? And if I recall, he came in, well, he came in about, well, yeah, I would say after, I can't read that stuff. Sorry.
After the little blue box.
Right, the fourth-
Under your yellow line
that's right,
there.
the fourth blue box. I'm sorry. He came in after the survey had been done and read, and then before. Can anyone help me out here?
Are you talking about school perceptions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, he was engaged with the district and with the team to create the survey.
Oh,
And to-
okay, so
and- and to
that
word-
was,
And to
okay.
wordsmith it, wordsmurf it. So they would wordsmith it, because he educated the district on the value of the survey and the
Okay.
mechanics of it, and we spent, actually, it was a really informative meeting as far as how they break the demographics down.
Yes.
And how they, and how they extrapolate the information to get where they need to be, and where the break lines are, and.
Yes.
So.
And that's
but
the
there was a
meeting
lot of
in
work that went
particular
into
I'm
the
thinking
survey.
of, is,
And then
yes.
they take care of the whole survey once and it reports back to them, and they compile the data, and then they come back and report back to us.
And so are those services included?
Not in this contract.
Right.
That's a separate contract.
That's what I recall.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, that may be a separate contract, but while we're on that subject, what are your guys' involvement with that? I mean, there's obviously some involvement with that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, as far as the process is involved?
Yeah, we work with them, in every school district, and basically we help kind of craft the survey. We'll work, with the district administration, and we usually a couple board members sit on that, committee, and we work real closely to craft those messages and tailor those messages, for whatever the proposed solutions are. So we work real closely with them.
And again, I think the survey was fine last time, but I did hear community members who had concerns about the survey. It kind of, and again, so that might be something we really have to look at, is to make sure that when we send this out, not And not that we're trying to, again, not that we're trying to direct the question so you answer it the way I want, but
Well-
there's some confusion, I think, with some people with it.
Well, there was a certain amount of education that had to go on, and I think that's part of the key changes in the process this time. Is last time we went out stone cold with an approach of, hey, we knew we needed some type
Sure.
of spending to take care of our priorities. You know, we came up, the board spent a lot of time in that planning process, including investing in our staff, investing in our students, and investing in our schools. And the investing in the schools part was the secure repair and revitalization of our aging facilities was a priority. Creating the flexible learning environments was a priority. And expanding our facilities for co-curriculars was a priority. Those three, as we've gone through this process, Ed, Kevin, and I, those really haven't strayed that far from those three categories. But when we went out to survey last time, what I found in the process was we still were educating the public about some of the nuts and bolts of what needed to get done. And we got some candid feedback of, hey, that's your job, that's what we elect you for. We got some, oh, what are you even thinking of spending the dollars there? You should be spending them here kind of thing. But we did put some of that into the survey talking about
Sure.
the impact investing in, you know, X has on Y. And I think our hope this time, at least the committee's hope, is to spend more time with the public ahead of schedule, getting that education effort out there.
Yeah.
And then maybe the survey is geared a little bit differently, because we don't have to put those educational components in there.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think that
I think that'll be good.
that's a wise plan and uses what we've come across or what we've learned already. But gosh, it seems to me that the time is short for that educational piece. If we're talking about having a survey going out around, and I believe spring break is the second or third week of March.
Well, it's a
There's
truncated.
not much time.
It's a truncated timetable, and that's why, you know, I think the district needs to have that support, because you can't have any kind of valid substantive communication with the public unless you know your costs. We can't Chicken Little this and say the sky is falling, that admin building is crumbling to the ground, and if we don't spend the money now, you know, it's going to be rubble. Well, how much is it to fix it? Well, it's is that number $200,000? Is that number 1.8 million? I don't know, but somebody does. So we need that kind of support, and so we need the design and we need the costing. Is it a truncated timetable? Yes. Can we get it done? Yes, because I think you don't want to put it out there too far. You don't want a 2-year educational effort. People will weary of it. And plus, I think you've appointed one super ad hoc committee.
That may
And
be
I have full faith and confidence in the chairman of getting it done.
I bet you do.
that may be the Achilles heel there.
But I mean,
No. We have met, if you saw our agendas in October,
I know you're
Ed
gonna
said
be-
enough of you. And he walked away from me.
I tell you, Sean, the only consideration I have along with Mo about the timetable and potentially school perceptions involvement, you know, the critical factor for me has to do with what is the time frame that our community needs in addition to the education to support referenda after they've already supported a $9.95 million phase one. Because no matter how much education we give and how good we are, if that community is not ready, if the time frame is not such that the community is ready to step up to phase two, we are in a problem. And I know there's research available, and I would like to know what the general trends are of time between referenda within a school system, what fails, what succeeds, how much we should be asking for to be able to add to that.
Your survey is going to answer a lot of those questions very specifically because you ask those questions. You ask about level of support. We asked about dollars. We broke it down to, would you support $50 a year? Would you support $75 a year? You know, we're very specific on those questions because you want to know those levels of interest. If you go out to survey and you find referendum support or investment support of 40%, you're too soon. I don't think there's a I don't think there's a silver bullet as far as how many days you wait or how many years. I think it's dependent on the community, and it's dependent on their faith and confidence in the district. You saw referendums just to the north of us fail and fail right after each other, even though there was high contributions by the general public, you know. It's a very personal community decision, and so I don't know. Right now, referendums are trending quite well.
Very well.
Very well. And the ones that I saw that failed, I had read articles online where people were questioning them even ahead of time, and quite validly. Like,
Well-
why aren't you even going out for bid on some of these things?
I think the other thing you guys did really well in phase one was that you really talked about it being a phased approach, that there was gonna be additional phases to the, you know, that the first phase was 9.95 million, and that you'd be looking at phase two and maybe phase three even. So I think you did a really good job as a district of communicating that. So I don't think the community's gonna be shocked when you're going back out.
And our priorities haven't changed. We're not taking a left turn or a right turn here and starting an education process about something foreign to them. We're still talking about safe and secure environments with a deferred maintenance. We still have deferred maintenance. We still have co-curricular needs, and we still have a priority to invest in our existing buildings.
I believe that we have needs that need to be supported. I believe that you just listed them quite articulately. My concern is bringing this back to the public, doing the education effort, in spite of the fact that they are expecting a phase two, doing that in the time that we have.
Well,
However, I do have faith in the committee.
And I do. I do too. As much as that might be hard for me to say sometimes. I
We
do.
appreciate and expect your support.
No, I do too, as much as that might be hard for me to say sometimes. But I mean, I think we're already, again, we've already talked about it. We've gone through phase one, so I mean, it's not like we said, here, community, phase 1, 2, and 3, we want you to approve them. No, we've gone through phase one, now we can go through with a higher level of education and knowledge, just because we've gone through that phase, and the community has gone through that phase too with us. And so that when we start going to these components, the community engagement solutions and so forth, they won't be like, what are you talking about? So I believe that we have to be deliberate to meet this schedule, but I believe it is a very doable schedule.
Well, and the education process is going to take time, and the survey will tell us how we are doing. That's the feedback we're looking for. Perhaps it's ambitious, perhaps it's too soon, but I do believe it has to continue. That education has to be ongoing.
Absolutely.
And so,
I do agree with
so
that.
I think that if we get that survey feedback, and that survey feedback is candid, that, wait a minute, we need to know more.
Okay.
Because we did ask them about the admin building, and they said, yeah, we support this, but we need to know more. We asked them about the closing of West and making, you know, our neighborhood schools larger to accommodate all of the kids out at West, and, you know, 25% of the people said, yeah, go ahead, do it. And there was hardly any education, you know, it was a little bit
Sure.
scripted, like you said, but about 45% said, well, we need to know more. So it's time to get them more information.
When you send that survey out to the public, are you gonna have the bids all in and the projects you want already figured out?
No, and the reason that you wouldn't do that is because you're asking the public to give you feedback on what you could potentially do. You don't want to say, here, this is what we're doing.
When do you tell the public what we wanna do and how much it's gonna cost?
Well, that's that resolution on August 30th. At that point, there's a dollar amount and a scope set for whatever the project is, and that's what it is.
For instance, Ed, if we go out with some notions of where we think investment should be done at, and and we find out that neighborhood schools and adding on to all the elementaries has no support in the public, and the public wants all brand-new gymnasiums on the high school and middle school, well, then you have to take that into account. Or if we say, hey, look, we need co-curricular space, and we need to put on an auditorium and a gymnasium and new cafeterias, and the public says, you need to focus on elementary buildings because you're running short and you're not allowing open enrollment in, that's where we want you to invest. Well, you can't ignore the survey, right?
Right.
But
I mean, the one thing we learned is you have to listen to the community feedback, because that's what you will get
So
when they
the
vote.
community, or maybe even most of the board won't even know how much we're gonna want until October 30th.
Well, we
Or
want
whatever
everything
whatever
in
the
your
October
left
date.
pocket and your right.
August.
August.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said October.
August. So the, all of
That's a
the.
resolution.
That's the
Correct.
75 days.
Right, and that
before-
resolution, again, is the dollar amount and the scope of work that would be defined in there. The project itself, though, you know, we wouldn't actually do the design work and the bidding of that out until after the referendum passes, cause you know, you don't wanna design something that you don't know that it's actually gonna happen. You know, Sean just went through a whole bunch of scenarios of what might happen, and you don't wanna design all of those. So that's this part, here, after the referendum passes, that's the actual project work.
I would agree, you know, that the survey instrument and how the survey is managed is critical. I think that is the 20% that does the 80 that'll give us the guidance we need. I am our previous experience has taught us a lot to follow best practices. And I want to ensure the fact that we maintain that, because again, it's going to be a large amount of money directed to needs that are ongoing, to a community, 1,100 or 1,200, who answered a 10,000 distributed survey. That was based on security, first and foremost, for our schools in the midst of a national school security crisis, if you will. We don't face that now. We're facing a facilities issue. And I want to ensure that we do everything that we can to take advantage of best practices. That's why I'm asking not just about success of referenda, but we're talking about a 1-2 punch. I think we need to gather as much information as we can, as broadly and as widely as we can, because I don't want us to be in a situation where we have a failed referenda for what we know is absolutely important to this district. And I am willing to spend more on the front end to get the answers that we need if we have to, and to utilize every source to help us get there. So, you know, with all due respect, and, you know, I appreciate all of the expertise that you all have, but I also want to encourage more broad thinking than the silos that we're in. Just to throw into the pot, that's all.
And the other thing too that Bob had mentioned was the community engagement really goes through this whole timeline. You know, this here specifically is maybe more where we might do a focus group and ask for input from the community, but we'll start by reporting the process up. You know, we'll start as soon as we can to, you know, say this is what we're doing, you know, for the next several months, and then we may have something once we get the survey then, and then we're gonna go do some community engagement groups, but we'll constantly communicate with the community to let them know what you guys are doing throughout this process.
As part of the education process, I do think we need, in addition to the survey, provide the data to our community that says, we're not sure if you're aware, but we're going to ask you these questions and prioritize them, but here's the data that you need to know to help you make the decision to help us decide where best to approach first. Whether it is in extracurricular space, in gymnasiums, in cafeterias, or whether it is moving toward, pre-K and K in all of our elementary schools. To ask a question without giving them the data and best practices, I think we must do that.
Good point. Any other questions for our team?
Well, we have, under new business G, we have a actionable item for you guys. So, I don't know if you wanna hang around if anybody comes up with any questions between now and then. Hopefully, even though the agenda looks long between here and there, it shouldn't be too long.
I have a feeling it's not that long.
Do you wanna?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, maybe I've got a lot of questions. Those
Yes,
receipts
thank you
and
very much.
disbursements.
32, right?
There we go.
That's 32.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brings us to reports B, which is the notification of early graduates for 2016. You were notified of all of those in your board packet. Mr. Bilston is here and more than eager and willing to answer any questions that you may have in regards to that list, but it is just a notification. There is no board action that's required on it, so unless anyone has any questions.
I was
exciting.
I was particularly impressed with our students who are doing early graduation.
The 1 year, the
3
3 year
years,
students?
the 3-year students.
Oh. No, you gotta keep all this, Gary.
Or wherever you
Right.
Doesn't have anything to do with early graduates, but.
Just one more graduate. I don't need any more information.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody
Just in
else.
reference to the handout that you were given, Mr. Bilson pointed out that you can vote once per day.
Yeah.
If you have multiple email addresses, which I know that board members do, you can vote once a day from every email address. It has nothing to do with the computer, it's all based on the email address. And there is a community down by Milwaukee that Alberta Darling is pushing for their district. I can't think of
that'll
which
get me
district it
going.
is.
Germantown.
Germantown.
Not that I'm keeping track.
Because Germantown needs the money.
Yeah, last time I looked.
Were they?
Yeah.
Slinger was in number one last time.
Slinger than it is.
Slinger's number one.
Yeah, last time I.
We just need to be 1 through 22. We just need to
We
be.
need to be in the top 11 of the large schools, there's 22 total. 11 awards to large schools, 750 students and more, and then 11 awards to small schools.
Let's shoot for 1 or 2. That'd be-
Well, we can be, should be able to be
When
a
is
Slinger.
the deadline?
This week.
Deadline, okay, so it's just this week. All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good luck,
Thank you.
Brings us then to personnel recommendations. We have under A, the approval of a resignation. That resignation was included in your board packet. That is for a third grade teaching position at East Elementary, Jacob Nelson. I would entertain a motion to approve the acceptance of that resignation.
So moved. And I will second that. Do we need to make another second resolution too on that, regarding that?
Regarding the liquidated damages?
Yes.
That would be great.
Okay, why don't we just do the first, and then we can do the second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Mortimer, seconded by Mr. Meering to accept the resignation. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Then the request or the consideration is to waive the punitive damages for the early termination of that contract.
I move to waive the liquidated damages for early resignation.
Second.
Motion by Meering, seconded by Vedro to waive the early termination penalty. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried. Brings us then to B, which is to the approval to post for that position. Entertain a motion for the approval of the posting.
So moved.
Second.
Having a motion by Vedro, seconded by Riley. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And then that brings us to C, which was the agenda adjustment, which is the approval of a long-term sub for that third grade teaching position at East. And that recommendation is for Sheila Smith. I would entertain a motion for that long-term sub position.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Vedro, seconded by Mearing. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us then to what became D, which originally was C. That is the approval of the 2015-2016 staff compensation. First up is the non-certified, non-represented staff. And that recommendation is coming from the Personnel Committee. And the accompanying wage representations were forwarded in your board packet. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the non-certified, non-represented staff wage schedule as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Riley, second by McNevin. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us then to 2, the ratification of the 2015-2016 collective bargaining agreement with the Baraboo Secretarial Clerical Organization, also known as SCO. That again comes from the Personnel Committee. I have been notified that the SCO bargaining unit did ratify that collective bargaining agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Having a motion by Vedro, seconded by McNevin.
No, Cummings.
Cummings. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us then to 3, which is the supplemental pay. There are 21 members in the bargaining unit. 6 of those members have a supplemental pay schedule that is dealt with outside of the collective bargaining agreement, and it is for supplemental pay. The supplemental pay for those 6 members ranges from 50 cents to $1.12 per hour, and it has to do with duties, responsibilities, and some other things that have made those adjustments necessary and granted in the past. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the supplemental pay schedule.
So moved.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, motion by Riley, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us then to new business. I will turn to Chair of Finance, Mr. McNevin, for the approval of the receipts and disbursements.
Move to approve.
I will second it.
Motion by McNevin, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Receipts and disbursements thus approved. Brings us then to the approval of the student trip to France.
I move to approve.
And Kim is here if anybody has any questions.
I think Kim would like to talk to us a little bit.
Okay, Ms. Kerska.
Pictures, just.
Bonjour,
Bonjour, Madame
Oui,
Kerska.
oui.
So I'm back again to ask if we could go to France. This will be my 9th trip with students from the Baraboo High School. I've been going every other year since 2005. Similar itinerary, but I thought I'd just bring you a few pictures because I haven't done that in a while, so let's just take a little trip.
I thought you'd bring us some hors d'oeuvres or something.
Oh, my. That's our goal, but I left them in my room, so.
Take the new Bordeaux, the new Bordeaux.
Well. So we always start in Chicago. That's where our adventure begins. We take our plane ride to Paris. We have a whirlwind tour. We stay there for about 2 days where we're just on the go, like sleeping very little, seeing everything we need to see. The kids are exhausted. We haven't slept in 23 hours, but we keep going. So we see everything we need to. I can only include a few pictures because I didn't want to stay here all night. I had asked one girl, how many pictures do you have? She's like, oh, about 500. I thought,
No.
I think I'll just stick to just maybe 20 or so. So this is our first day. We're kind of tired. We haven't changed our clothes, but we're happy. And I included this picture because this is my favorite part of France, and that has to be the desserts and the food. So for our very first lunch, those were some little pies that we had. Even you can eat this little chocolate right here. So yes, very good. We move out of Paris and we go to Versailles to see the Hall of Mirrors, the palace, the gardens. And what I really like about our company, we have these LEAP activities, and basically they are ways to actively engage the students. This is called Seize the Chateau, and each group of students have sort of a role play, a part of the French Revolution. So these students here were a part of the peasant poor. One year I had to be Marie Antoinette, and I did lose my head in a garden, but came back with it after. So we kind of just acted out and learned about the French Revolution, but not just by reading a book, we pretend we're in it. We go out from Versailles to Chartres, one of my favorite cathedrals, even more than Notre Dame in Paris, and you're just driving along country roads and there it is, it's just magnificent. We go to the Loire Valley. This is a big part of French 3 where we study the castles. The kids love this part, especially the girls. They pretend, you know, oh, I'd like to get married there. I've heard that once or twice. This is Chenonceau. And this is Amboise, and Leonardo da Vinci is buried here. A LEAP activity that they really like, we go to a chef school, and we're all divided into groups. One group will do the appetizers, one main meal, one dessert. And if you know Mr. Gillick, here he is, hard at work, making I'm not sure what course. And some of our students are learning from this chef. New addition this year, this chef brought his teenage son, which I heard from my girls that he was actually very cute, so. He was like a rock star, pictures all over. We go down to Lascaux to see the caves that have been dated, estimated to 20,000 years old. It's only a replica, but it's an exact replica, so it's another just great learning experience for them. This is a new city for me, and basically we're going along these winding roads. We turned the corner and everyone in the bus just went like this, because it's just this beautiful little village way up high on a cliff. And there's not a lot to do there, but the scenery is just breathtaking. Carcassonne, a medieval town in a walled-in town that we visited. Another LEAP experience, the kids have to sell me a piece of art and I have to decide which group did the best job. And they get very creative. They get to do this one in English, so I get to hear all kinds of things. So they have different paintings from the Provence area, and then I decide at the end who has won. Les Baux, another village way up high, and I have lots of pictures. There was a high wind advisory this last spring when we were there, and you can see from her hair. I have pictures with one girl, her hair is just like flying out, but very, very strong winds, but we really enjoyed our stay there too. Then we head down and see some Roman ruins. There's the Colosseum in Nîmes, and the Pont du Gard, the aqueduct. We do another LEAP activity where we do some fencing and some calligraphy. I am not very good at fencing or calligraphy, and I've done it many times. But I'll keep trying. They always would like to do the Nice extension, so I added it in. They love Nice, the sand, or pebble beaches, I should say. The beautiful blue water. It's not supposed to be warm enough to swim, but they try. You know, the people from Nice kind of look at them like, huh, what are you doing? But they want to get in the water a little bit. We smell perfume at the Fragonard factory, so we have fun doing that. And of course, Monaco. When I get them ready to go, I try to start it off by saying, hey, how many of you know about Grace Kelly? And they all kind of look at me. Each year it gets worse, but I get a little background. And so I have to tell them about her. I related to, like, you know, the new with, you know, Charles and moving on through the different royalty in England. They get it eventually. I asked just a few students, just send me a couple of your favorite pictures, and this is what I received. Although I did not add, I asked one girl to send pictures, and I had a picture of the cute boy at the winery and the cute boy at the chef school, so I didn't include those. I mean, they were cute, but I love this one. It's on the first floor of the Eiffel Tower. This is something new that I just saw, and they kind of posed for that. This is in the Hall of Mirrors. I'm not sure exactly how, well, it's a reflection, I guess, in the Hall of Mirrors. I thought that was kind of interesting. This was taken from the top of the Eiffel Tower. And in the water, enjoying one of their last few days in France. They never want to go home. This was taken in the city of Arles, and this is the little cafe, if you've seen Vincent van Gogh's The Cafe Terrace at Night. This was the one that he used when he painted it. So our hotel is right across the street from it. Another favorite picture submitted. And the last one, when they go to Nice, there is this ice cream place that they absolutely adore. And on this day, I think we went twice, or possibly, this was the third time, I'm pretty sure. It was about 9:30 at night, and I said, we gotta get up early, and Mr. Gillick was kind enough to take the last group for just one more ice cream, and so they did. It has any flavor you can imagine. Weird things like tomato, basil, lavender, but then the normal things, you know, fruits and all of that. And that is the end of my tour. So
I just wanted to give you a few glimpses of our trip, so.
And I know Mr. Gillick, you know, we're blessed to have him because he is a native speaker of French, but there's someone else that would help chaperone if you needed help.
I don't Oh, yeah. Mr. Gillick was funny because we were in the airport waiting and he was Skyping with his mom. Mom, I'm getting ready to go, and she wanted to speak French to the kids, and she looked at him and she said, Lawrence, you didn't get a haircut. All the kids are listening, so. Yes, he's a great addition. The kids like him. He's young. He can speak French. He has lots of energy, so I'm super lucky to have him to help out too.
Thank you.
That's all.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Beering, you want to reintroduce?
I'll still move to
Is there a second?
I will second that. Je fais le deuxième.
Nice job.
Merci.
Motion by Beering, seconded by Riley. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Have a great time.
Merci.
C under new business, the approval of the Student and Exchange Visitor Program certification request and the process. And for further explanation, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Miller.
Yeah, so I included in your packet, this is the second time I bring this to you. I think last time it was very clear you needed more information. As a reminder, we have a resident in the Baraboo community who's requesting that a family member come from Vietnam and do 4 years of study at Baraboo High School. The only way that that is possible is with an F1 visa, and in order for them to study at Baraboo High School has to go through the certification process to accept F1 visa students. You know, this isn't an extreme cost. We're normally would come to the board, but I think it is something worthy of your consideration for approval, because it will put the high school in a position down the road where we can continue to accept students under visa. The cost of the school district is $2,355. That is somewhat significant, but again, could have long-term implications. It's a one-time cost. The certification process is explained to us as being very time-consuming and requires active participation. Outside of that, I don't have many more details. So, you know, if we're in, is what it sounds like.
So there's a cost, but then there's also a time on our part that has to be taken.
That is correct. We'll have to dedicate human resource to go through that certification process.
Okay.
One of the questions you might have too is what is the revenue, you know, with a student that spends that time with us. The way this works is the public high school can require that amount that we would have revenue for per pupil. We require that from the individual family to study here.
Are they aware of that?
Yes.
I'm sorry, what is the cost to the family?
What's our per pupil right now?
The revenue limit?
Yeah.
Oh,
Revenue 9,200.
About $9,200.
oh, so the family.
The family pays that cost, yeah.
Now, part of it is that they're going to be here for 4 years, but we would only have that student for 2, is that correct?
We can have that student attend our public high school once we're certified 1 year at a time. And the family understands that. Their hope is that the student would become a US citizen before a second year of study. And if not, would go down to Madison until that were to transpire, and then they would come back.
Okay.
Do they have to pay this money every year?
Yes.
They're
We're not gonna have a lot of families opting to do this.
They're not a state resident.
Right. They're not a US citizen.
But if they become a United States citizen and then continue in our school, then they are an FTE for
The
Correct,
state.
correct. So, I mean, we're more than happy to go through the process. I just wanted to bring it to you for your approval because I do think it has implications moving forward.
Well, it sounds like it has implications probably more so from a time, you know, when you're involving Homeland Security, who knows what you're gonna deal with.
How much would this cost the family?
$9,200
well, that's just for the tuition.
for the tuition, correct?
Yeah. And until they would be a citizen and a resident, and then at that point, then they're part of our enrollment process, and then when you get reimbursed by the state, so.
You know, even though at first I was very reluctant because of the costs, but if they're paying the cost of being here as a student, I see a lot of positives for us in that regard. And so it's not like, you know, obviously we got the $23.50 that we gotta put forward on it, but the fact that they will be a student and paying a student, I think it's a positive. I see many positives for us for it. Now, I think I was maybe a more reluctant voice on the first score, but now I know more about it, I'm all in favor of it.
Is that a motion?
I move to move forward with the process and to do, I don't, what's it called again? I don't have the.
Student and Exchange Visitor Program.
Yeah, to move ahead with the Student Exchange Visitors Program.
And the associated $2,355
50
that
costs
goes
and
with it.
our own time that has to be invested into it to make that process.
Do we have any
be-
guarantee that we're gonna get paid from those people?
Well, we wouldn't let them study here if we weren't gonna be able to collect tuition. That's part of the
When
process.
do they pay the 9,300, whatever it is?
So- I'm sorry.
When do they pay the 90?
I don't have the answer to that, Ed, but I can find out.
I mean, if they're already here and in school, what happens then?
I will find
Well,
out.
they can't be here and be in school unless we get this done. And I would assume that they would pay that before they enroll.
Enroll, right, or with enrollment.
Well, by that third Friday or whatever, right?
The idea is for them to be a student next fall, is that correct?
Correct, starting with the 2016-17 school year. So we will even have to see if the certification process can be done that quickly.
Do we know, is the family applying to other school districts?
They want Baraboo High School,
Why?
because they heard that you're on the board.
Because of the
now.
committee.
They have other,
Policy.
their
Like
children,
that
Policy.
they have children in this district.
They, family members, yeah.
Yes.
Our reputation runs far and wide, doesn't
It
it?
does,
Yeah,
it
Yeah,
goes far
that's
and wide,
all
far
over
and
the
wide.
So forth,
Yes.
Okay, there was a motion, was there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion by Mearing, seconded by McNevin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Good luck. Let us know. how it's
Yeah,
going.
I will.
Brings us then to new business D, approval of the employee handbook changes.
Move to approve.
Are you moving to approve all of them?
Of
1, 2,
course
and
I
3?
am.
I'm sorry?
I'd actually approve all the way through G. If it moved things along, but
No, you can't do that.
if not, let's just stick with 1,
All
2, 3.
policies stick to it. I will second those changes.
Being a motion by McNevin, seconded by Mearing, for the approval of the changes listed under 1, 2, and 3. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried, so thus those changes to the employee handbook will be effective as soon as they're posted on the website. Brings us then to E, the approval of the construction agreement for Tuck Point Service with CG Schmidt. This was a recommendation that is coming from the Building, Grounds, and Transportation Committee. Mr. Cummings, do you wish to share? Otherwise, I can talk about the monetary aspect.
Go ahead, Kevin.
This involves work, the scope of which includes the high school, GLW, North Freedom, and ABE. These are projects, and feel free to chime in at any point, Mr. Prefer, if I'm off base. These are projects that have been on our to-do list but have not yet been done. These projects would be done next year and completed by the end of June.
Yes.
Is that correct? The total's roughly $60,000 at the high school, 15 at GLW, a little over 14,000 at North Freedom, and 18,000 at ABE. The total contract value, including the insurances and the fee, is $113,281. And the recommendation from the Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation Committee is to proceed.
Oh, I will make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Having a motion by Cummings, seconded by Mortimer, any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us then to F, updates from the infamous ad hoc committee chaired by the best chairman of any committee the school district has ever had.
Well,
Mr. McDonald.
ad hoc committee, I would say, for sure.
Okay, you're on.
The champion of ad hocers.
Well, we are very excited to report that we have met with every school and every group, including, we met with SCO and the educational assistants, we met with maintenance, and we met with the kitchens staff, we met with each of the buildings. Tomorrow night, we're meeting with the co-curricular group, which is gonna be some varsity coaches and some parents in charge of club programs and any other kind of co-curriculars. So tomorrow night is really our last meeting. But we've got a lot of feedback, and I'm really encouraged by all the dialogue. I'm encouraged by the feedback we've gotten from everybody. It seems to stay on target with what we're looking at. Yeah, we get a lot of flyers out there, and when you have a conversation right after a 3-hour presentation about school safety and security, you start hearing about kitchen screen doors and things like that. I think we talked about 20 minutes on a kitchen screen door. But that being said, a lot of the dialogue, the group has been very appreciative of the investments that the board has taken and the community has made. And look forward to this process going forward. I think everybody was happy that we came out and engaged the staff first to listen to what they had to say. I'm encouraged by the board dialogue about the support that we're looking for to have the board authorize. I know we have to communicate well with the timetable being truncated. I know we might need to augment the information that's being presented and being gathered. I think that those are good suggestions. This is a fluid process. It certainly isn't repeat step one all over again. It's a different dialogue delivered in a different manner. And so I think it's important that we engage the public and get the support we need right away.
How, I don't wanna spend an hour with the board talking about all of the anecdotes that have developed at each of the buildings and the common themes that are throughout the buildings, but just highlight a few of them so that the board, who's not been part of that process,
Yeah.
other than the three of us, just bring them up to speed a little bit.
Well, the first time around was really easy because it was a list of deferred maintenance that we had done 5 times. Okay, we had employed MSA 3 times to update this list, and it just kept getting longer and longer and bigger and bigger.
Excuse the interruption. Our parent-teacher conferences conclude at 7:30 tonight. I want to thank parents and guardians for coming out tonight, and we always invite you to contact us at any time with your questions. Thank you also to staff for your preparation and all your time tonight. Don't forget to stop by the bake sale on your way out.
It's Charlie Brown.
Parent teachers conference is not the board meeting.
Let's get there while the
That
big
being
sale.
said, there's a very good example of some of the feedback we do get. But the first time around was easy because everybody got it. We hadn't spent any money on roofs or parking lots or security. So it's the low-hanging fruit. What we're listening to now is and the one thing that did make an impact on the learning environment was investing in air conditioning in all of the elementary buildings, and we got tremendous feedback on that. We got a lot of tremendous feedback from the middle school and the high school about our failure to invest in air conditioning in these buildings because they are going from a 95-degree classroom down to a 72-degree classroom, back up to an 88-degree classroom. And granted, that might be for just a few weeks, but those few weeks are pretty critical for instruction when we measure our days we have in the seat. But this becomes more difficult because now we're talking about modernizing the community campus. I think it's still important that we look at breathing life into 50-year-old buildings. They weren't built 50 years ago with instruction of today in mind, and that's kind of the feedback we're getting from teachers. The utilization of the room has changed. The flexibility of the room has not. And so while you have different groupings going on, you don't have furniture, you don't have an environment that suits that. We also have limited facilities in that we have added on to every elementary building. We're getting feedback that, sure, you put on 4, 5, 6 classrooms, but you didn't change the cafeteria, you didn't change the gym, you didn't change the media center. The art room, the music room, those are all been stolen and used for other purposes. We have occupational and physical therapy taking place in the halls. Our special needs didn't exist when these buildings were built. And so the spaces we have are not proper. But these require significant investments. And then we haven't heard the whole co-curricular thing. We sat down with the admin. Your admin building is a mess. It's a complete mess that has to be addressed. And the path forward has been presented in the fact that we have to deal through the referendum process. Regardless of when we engage the public or how we engage the public, the fact of the matter has to be that there's an urgency to do so now because we have needs that far exceed any capacity we have in a budgetary situation. So if we want to do anything, we have to start getting information out to the public, and we have to do it with the proper numbers and the right ideas. Some of the other feedback we've had, the feedback's been great. It's been far and wide. I mean, from the number of bubblers in the hallway to, and it's what it is the feedback we are getting is there are things that steal instructional time. And those are some are easy fixes, some are not so easy fixes. But I think that's what everybody wants is more flexible spaces and more time. And what gets you more time? Well, cafeterias. If you can go to, instead of 3 lunches at the middle school and 3 lunches in the high school, if you went to 2.
Oh, score's big. Huge time.
Well, I think if you took a video of the lunch, of the 3 lunches at the middle school and compressed that into fast speed, and showed that to families, I think there'd be a tremendous amount of support for cafeterias. Seeing that every day, I can't imagine anyone can even get food in their mouths, much less have it be a healthy luncheon environment. It's messed up over there. So it's true that these needs are real and they're imminent. That taking care of them sooner than later is.
Yeah, and back to my original point, I really don't think that we need to take a Chicken Little approach. The sky isn't falling. We've got wonderful facilities. But I think that the board's original commitment at the very beginning of we want to invest in our schools. We're not looking for 40 acres or 80 acres to build some new campuses in the future. We're looking to invest in the buildings we got. And the investments over the next 5, 10 years are going to be critical for us being able to use those facilities for the next 30, 40, 50 years.
Thank you for the update.
Yes, thank you. I'd love to, if you have meeting notes or the more that you can tell us
Well,
about
we
what.
can-
Oh
we can
my,
data dump you.
Atlanta, can we help you out?
Is
And
that
that's-
something that the
I
whole
would
board
be-
would be
I
interested in?
would be
Is a copy
interested
of all
in-
the survey results and?
Sure, I'd
Okay.
be very interested in hearing.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And we've broken it down by building, and
Great.
we've taken notes at every
Is-
building, so
is
that's
email-
all.
Email's
With
great.
everybody, and Ed already has a hard copy, so.
Yeah.
Lori's got one.
Thank you, Sean. Brings us then to new business G, which is the approval of the CG Schmidt Phase 2 Scope of Services Agreement. Obviously, we had plenty of discussion previous. The bottom line is that for the services that were outlined in the presentation, the total fixed fee is $32,500. Those are paid in 2 installments. One's due in July of 2016, the other one is November of 2016. And I would entertain a motion for the approval of those fees as mentioned.
So moved.
Second.
Jeff, that is not currently in our budget, but that would be next year's budget. Those payments would be both in the next
believe the
And then
first in
it's-
July of 16.
Okay. So,
A motion by McNevin, seconded by Mortimer. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you, everybody. The committee appreciates it.
thanks for all your hard work.
Oh, it's just beginning, right, Ed?
Oh, yeah.
That's what
Day
scares
one
me.
right now.
We're gonna get you on Instagram before this is over.
For better or for worse, we're at the portion of the agenda where I would entertain a motion for closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Having a motion and a second. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye.